Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we'll be talking about healers in patch 8.1 and primarily about my healing main for the new raid, and I'll also be talking this video about an overall best healer, if I can phrase it in some way, a healer that's great at raids and 5-man, so this might be somewhat of an educational video for new players coming into 8.1 who might not be able to or don't want to have multiple alts and they're looking to start a healer that's great in raids and 5-man situations, because community perception is a thing right now. So even if you're not a top raider or pushing those really high mythic plus keys, there is a high chance that if you're playing a healer that's perceived to be bad, you won't get invited. I know plenty of Resto shamans who still get declined in their plus 10s regardless of the item level or IO score, which is kind of insane in my opinion. So overall, I don't enjoy this whole community perception, but you have to kind of play into it, because you don't want to be spending hours and hours looking for Mythic Plus groups. So for the people who really wanted to just know what healing main I was going to play in 8.1 and for the new raid and stuff like that, I have been contemplating for a long time to actually maybe come back to certain healers for 5-mans and have a healer for raiding and kind of separate those kind of both worlds. Because a lot of the healers who are great, or at least there is a lot of disparity between some of the healers who are great in raiding situations are not really that great in 5-mans, and primarily that falls on to Holy Priests and Restoration Shamans. Well, Restoration Shamans are only gonna get better in 8.1 in terms of raid healing, but their community perception in 5-mans is pretty poor. So I know a lot of players, a lot of Mythic raiders who, you know, play Holy Priest in raids, but they have another healer to push Mythic Plus. Like we're talking about top end Mythic Plus, like 18s, 19s. So you kind of have you have to do that if you really want to push really high-end content. But if you don't want to really do that, there are a couple of healers that are great at both. But there is no big surprise that I'm going to be sticking with a Mistweaver monk for patch 8.1 and the new raid environment is going to be announced or released on January 22nd from what I remember. And I have thought about coming back with Restoration Druid. Restoration Druid is going through a lot of turmoil right now. A lot of people are hating the changes that happened to Resto Druids in terms of the raiding performance with big tranquility nerfs, and it kind of makes sense because I did not really enjoy that playstyle that much in raiding scenarios, because I don't feel that any healer should rely on their cooldowns that much. I know some healers, or at least some Resto Druids, enjoyed that playstyle because it was very different from Legion, but as a Resto Druid coming in from Legion into BfA, it was a completely new world, because all of a sudden your tranquility was such a big portion, and outside of the cooldowns everything else felt a little lackluster, so you kind of waited for those cooldowns. And I kind of wanted to like that, but I never really got into it, so I never did that much raiding as a Resto Druid, and I stuck with 5-mans, because Resto Druid in 5-mans was extremely fun to me. Cat weaving was really fun, balancing your bleeds, balancing your hots was a really good playstyle in my opinion, and their damage and healing was very good to an extent. The Resto Druids were one of the top Mythic Plus healers, and they'll probably still be one of the top Mythic Plus healers in 8.1, because tranquility changes are not that big of a deal, and Wild Growth buff is actually going to be an, you know, a benefit in 5-mans. So I was thinking about Resto Druid, but I've seen the changes that Blizzard did. I've seen the lack of buffs that they received, because the tranquility nerfs were far too big, and the compensation Wild Growth buff was not really big enough to really account for that nerf. So my prediction is that we look at the past. We look at the past of what happened with previous healers. So Blizzard is very careful about not overbuffing classes. This is what I've seen or in the past. So if you look at Uldir, if you look at the first week when Uldir came out, it was heroic. What Blizzard usually does during this week or whatever when the heroic comes out is that they gather as much information. So they gather logs. They basically got, and they're not the perfect logs, because heroic, most of the guilds who go in to do the first week heroic raids, they bring in as the maximum amount of players, and they don't really optimize everything. So the logs that happen there, they usually lean towards healers who have really big raid cooldowns, and they can look really strong in those. But Blizzard actually uses this data, and they buff or nerf classes based on it. But the nerfs or the buffs that happened, and we take Mythic Uldir as an example. Discipline was nerfed before Mythic Uldir came out. They were nerfed. But considering that even after the nerf they were around 20% stronger than every other healer except for Holy Priest, that nerf was so insignificant that it made no sense. Either the numbers were completely wrong, or the class balance was not really good, and also the fact that in heroic Discipline Priests, there's a lot of Discipline Priests who might be learning or not that good of a Discipline Priest. So their numbers were not great, but once Discipline Priests are given, you know, they're played by the top end players in that Mythic content, they can really, really shine. So all of a sudden Discipline was being extremely, extremely strong, and they're getting huge nerfs in 8.1. And to the same extent, Resto Shamans received a buff before Mythic Older came out, and again, that buff was not significant enough considering that Resto Shamans were buffed like 2 or 3 times more after that. And with 8.1 they're getting a chain heal buff as well and a new talent. So you can see how careful Blizzard is about buffing classes and making sure they're not going to be overpowered, and sometimes they really don't get that right. So my prediction is that 8.1 hits, Resto Druids doing all their content, seeing smaller numbers, they're complaining, Resto Druids don't like the changes, they want buffs. Blizzard will probably be aware of this fact because there's a lot of community perception about Resto Druids being pretty poor in raids in 8.1. And it's all predictions at this point. But when the raid, or when the heroic raid is released, the new raid, when heroic is released, Resto Druids are going to go in there. There's going to be a lot of logs, there's going to be a lot of data for Blizzard to gather, so all of a sudden they will get more information, and Resto Druids are not going to be performing well, and they most likely will buff Resto Druids before Mythic is released. That's my prediction right now. Now what I'm concerned is whether that buff is going to be significant enough. There's a high chance that they're not going to provide big enough buff, and all of a sudden all the Mythic Raiders, and if you are Mythic Raider, if you are pushing high Mythic Plus and stuff like that, you know that having a strong class, even if it's like a couple of % stronger than the class below it, is still gonna get you invited to a raid. So all of a sudden Resto Druids might get benched for that really top end raiding, and it doesn't feel great. So that's my concern, is that Blizzard is not going to act in time. They're not going to buff Resto Druids to make them more viable in that top end content. This is one of the reasons why I decided to play my Mistweaver. I've been having a lot of fun since I started playing Mistweaver at the start of BfA. Mistweavers are really strong in 5 months and really strong in raids. Mistweavers can be a little bit boring in raid situations where Essence Font plays a huge part of your healing. I kind of wish they brought in Fist Weaving into it, maybe buffed Rising Mist, but you can't get everything. But to my knowledge of playing a lot of the healing classes here and trying them out and Mythic Plus and stuff like that, if I were to look at Mythic Plus balance, I would really consider Mistweavers to be one of the top healers in Mythic Plus, and especially in 8.1. To some extent, I consider Mistweavers to have flown under the radar of being borderline overpowered. This is how I consider Mistweavers in 5-man content, because their single target healing is beyond overpowered. After playing every healing class except for Resto Shamans, no one compares in terms of the single target healing that Mistweaver can provide. It's just insanely strong. Blizzard is nerfing Enveloping Mist, but that nerf is extremely small, so Mistweavers are still going to be the kings of single target healing. They're really amazing utility in 5-mans. Ring of Peace is insanely strong, 5% physical damage buff, mass AoE stun. There's a lot of stuff that Mistweavers are doing really well, and I consider in terms of Mythic Plus Mistweavers to be really strong, and I'm going to be using my Mistweaver to push Mythic keys. To some extent, I still feel Resto Druids are going to be really strong and one of the top healers in 5-mans. So, and especially considering the playstyle is really fun, I feel Resto Druid playstyle is more engaging in terms of the damage and the healing that they do, because Kitty Weaving gives you more buttons to press in terms of how you're going to deal damage and how you're going to take care of, you know, healing up other allies. So I do like Resto Druids, and then after that it's gonna play up. Like, I mean, this priest is probably gonna fall down because this priest is receiving like nerfs yesterday or a couple of days ago on top of the massive nerfs they got before. So I don't see this priest being top anymore. Holy Paladin might sneak in there. Holy Paladin has been, you know, a very solid healer in terms of raids and 5-mans. There's nothing wrong with Holy Paladin. They're very strong in what they do. Their 2 target healing in raids is unmatched, and they're pretty good in Mythic Plus as well. But if I were to talk about some of the raiding performance that I consider in 8.1, I think Holy is probably going to be really strong. Honestly, after the Disc Priest nerfs, Disc is still most likely going to be a strong raid healer, but I don't see Disc being the overpowered machine that it was in Old Deer. I think maybe Holy is going to slowly take over here. Disc is still going to be strong. Mistweavers are going to be in a solid position in raids, because Mistweavers are very versatile healers, because they can provide really strong single target healing and they can provide really strong AoE healing. So I can see a lot of Mythic guilds bringing maybe 2 Mistweavers for certain fights where there is a lot of tank damage happening, and maybe there's a lot of AoE, because they're super versatile. They're really good at that. So all of a sudden you don't have to be like, okay, we're gonna have a raid healer sitting out because we need to bring in single target healer. You can have a Mistweaver who will do single target healing and AoE. So I feel they're very good in terms of roster management. So this is one of the reasons. And Resto Shaman, I can't forget Resto Shaman, because Resto Shaman, in terms of raid healing, I'm really interested in actually playing it. I was considering to really play a Resto Shaman for raids, because I always enjoyed Resto Shamans in raiding environment. Maybe Cloudburst is gonna make a comeback, and I always like Cloudburst a lot. So I will try out Resto Shaman in raiding environments, but again, community perception when I want to do Mythic Plus, it's going to be hard for me to find groups, because Pogs are brutal right now in terms of getting invited. So again, like Holy Priest or Resto Shaman in 8.1, great in raids, most likely really great in raids, and then in 5-mans you're gonna have a hard time. And that's one of the reasons why I picked Mistweaver Monk, is because Mistweaver is great in raiding situations, very versatile, and one of the best healers in 5-mans. Like I mentioned before, they kind of flew under the radar. Discipline Priest did that at the start of Uldir, where they were so overpowered, and it took Blizzard a long time to nerf them. And Mistweavers are kind of flying under the radar in terms of Mythic Plus balance right now, but I don't think they're that overpowered. I just think they're a little bit better than every other healer, a tiny bit, and I don't want Mistweavers to be nerfed, because I feel there's new players coming in and playing Mistweavers, and this class that was really unrepresented in Legion is all of a sudden becoming more and more popular, and I really enjoy my Mistweaver. If I really would have to say, I would consider Mistweaver to be one of the best overall healers in World of Warcraft right now. Really good in raids, one of the best healers in Mythic Plus, and pretty easy to play. A good beginner's class in my opinion. But maybe I'm a bit biased, so I would love to hear your opinions. So overall, just a little summary, I am sticking with a Mistweaver. I probably will try to play my Resto Druid more in 5-man content, and I will have to try a Resto Shaman in raids, because I feel they're going to be really fun again. So thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next guide.